Hi there! Today I'm going to be making something delicious for barbecue season. It's called Mexican layer dip, and I'm going to show you a way that you can make it so that if you're still social distancing and you're having that legal family gathering of no more than 10 individuals and 3 families, a way that you can make 3 individual portions instead of one large one. So for my Mexican layer dip, it looks overwhelming in terms of the amount of ingredients that I have, but most of these ingredients you should already have on hand, and it's simply because I'm actually going to be making a fresh salsa today in order to put in my Mexican layer dip instead of buying a pre-made salsa from the grocery store. So today I'm going to be starting with my fresh salsa. Now, fresh salsa, a lot of people get intimidated by it. They think that it's really difficult to make. It's really expensive if you try and purchase it at the grocery store. Usually around 500 milliliters is probably $7. It's really cheap if you want to make it at home. So I like to have something on hand that is called diced tomatoes and chilies. This is a 283 gram can. In Canada now you can get a product called Rotel, and it comes in mild and it comes in medium. So this is just the standard one. So it's got pickled jalapenos in it. Now if you don't have this at home, you could just use 283 grams of diced tomatoes that would come in the can, and you could either use fresh jalapenos that you have on hand, you could use pickled jalapenos that you get in a jar and keep in your fridge, or you can even just add a dash of hot sauce if that's all you have. So for this little part of the recipe, I'm going to be using a small food processor, and it just makes my life easier because I don't have to chop everything. So for my salsa, I have that 283 grams of that tomatoes and chilies. Now I've gone ahead and I've drained it. You'll still see that there's a little bit of liquid that's come out of it. That's okay. Since I drained it, we need that little bit. I have about 1/3 cup of roughly chopped and washed cilantro here, or coriander. I have about a tablespoon of fresh or bottled lime juice. I have about 1/4 of a medium-sized onion. This is a yellow standard cooking onion, but you could use white onion as well, or even red if that's all you have on hand. And about 1/2 teaspoon to 3/4 teaspoon of kosher salt or sea salt. Okay, now this is obviously to taste. It depends on the seasoning that's in the tomatoes. If you buy tomatoes that are already salted, you're going to want to cut back on your salt overall. So to start with, I'm going to take my onions, which I've roughly chopped, and I'm going to pulse them in my food processor. And I want to start with my onions first because they're the firmest of all of the things that are going to be going in. So I'm going to put my little food processor together. So I'm just going to pulse my onion in my food processor a few times to sort of roughly chop it. And then at this point, I'm going to open the food processor up. I'm going to scrape the sides down to make sure that all the onion is in the bottom. And I'm going to add in my next ingredients, which are my tomatoes with the chilies and my cilantro, which is roughly chopped already. Now the cilantro is to taste. I have about 1/3 cup roughly chopped here, as I previously stated. If you're not a huge fan of cilantro, then you can put less. If you like cilantro a lot, then you can put a little bit more. And again, I'm just going to pulse. I don't want to process it too much because this is still not a chunky salsa, but okay. We're going to open it back up again, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to push everything down from the sides. And then I'm going to take my lime juice here, and I'm going to pour that in, and it's going to provide nice acidity, and it's actually going to allow us to keep it in the fridge for about a week without it browning. So the citric acid that's in the lime is going to prevent browning of the vegetables that are in there. And then finally I'm going to add my salt along the top here. Make sure all of it gets in there, and I'm going to just reprocess this a couple of times. So we'll let that last one go here, and then I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to show you what my product looks like here. So the salsa, you can see, is pretty salsa-y looking now. It's nice and fresh looking. You can see the green from the cilantro. You can see the tomato pieces. You can see a little bit of the onion there. And that's going to be perfect in one of our layers in our dip. So I'm just going to set that aside for now. And now we're going to start the most important layer of the dip. We're going to start with the base layer, okay? So the base layer has two types of milk products in it. It has cream cheese and it has sour cream. But we're going to be starting with 8 ounces of cream cheese in the brick, okay? And you want this soft. So I've pre-softened this in the microwave for about 4 minutes at 30%. If it comes straight out of the fridge. If you have enough forethought to take it out, you can leave it on the counter for a few hours and it'll soften up nicely. You don't want the whipped one for this, okay, because it has a lot of air added into it and it'll kind of mess with the texture of your overall dip. And then I have here 2 tablespoons of sour cream. I have 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise. I have a heaping teaspoon of homemade taco seasoning. Now I'm going to put the recipe for this with the recipe for the dip below. I just find it as easy to make my own taco seasoning as to purchase the stuff from the grocery store, and it's a lot less sodium in the homemade version. So things that might go into it would be like cumin, onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, chili powder, okay? Then I have here about a teaspoon of any type of hot sauce that you have on hand. It could be Tabasco, it could be Valentina, something of that nature. I have a tablespoon of this is lemon juice this time. And then I have 2 tablespoons of Worcester here, okay? And that's going to be one of the last things that we go in. We also need a silicone spatula for this. You can also use a stand mixer or a hand mixer for this part, but if your cream cheese is soft enough, then it should be relatively easy. So I'm just going to start essentially by creaming the cream cheese, breaking it up a little bit, mixing it in, and then I'm going to add in my sour cream. Set that aside. And I'm going to cream that in. And before I add in my mayonnaise, I like to add my seasoning in at this point because it needs a little bit of extra working to sort of break up the spices and get them properly amalgamated into the dip itself. Now if you like it very spicy, you can definitely add more hot sauce. It's definitely to taste. My taco seasoning has, instead of traditional chili powder in it, all I had on hand was actually Kashmiri chili powder, which is quite a bit spicier. It's an Indian chili powder. So I haven't added any additional cayenne to my taco seasoning. But if you like a very spicy taco seasoning, then you can add cayenne pepper or even just a little bit of dried chili peppers to it. So this is looking really good now. So I'm actually going to take my little spatula that I used for my salsa, and I'm just going to put my mayonnaise in here. And the mayonnaise and the sour cream are just going to make it that much creamier, okay? So it looks really, really good. And I want to add my last few things gradually because they are liquids. They might slop out of the bowl a tiny bit. So let's start with my hot sauce here. This is a really popular recipe in my family. Everyone likes it. It's great serving at any type of backyard party or family gathering, birthday parties. We served it for Super Bowl a bunch of times. It's easy to make and it's gluten-free, which is a plus. And you can definitely change it up. You can add a layer of guacamole to this if you want. You can add a layer of refried beans. So I'm going to add about half of my lemon juice in now, and I'm going to very slowly and methodically mix that in. And when most of the liquid has disappeared, I'm going to add in the remaining half tablespoon. And my last ingredient that will go into the base layer is the Worcester. And the Worcester is a pretty important component because it adds that savory kind of umami to that layer. So it's a lot of liquid. So start with a bit, same thing, and just kind of fold it in. You'll notice that there's no extra salt that's going into this bottom layer. That's because the Worcester is salty and the cream cheese actually has salt added, as well as the mayonnaise. And the taco dip a tiny bit as well. So I'm gonna put the rest of that in and set that aside. You wanna make sure that you're scraping down your spatula in your bowl as you go. And then once things are better combined, you can get in there and so that is perfect right now. And you can see that it's very creamy. It almost looks like whipped cream, but thicker and kind of a brownish color. So I'm gonna set that aside for a moment and I'm gonna show you the different vessels that you could build your dip in. So the one that I use most often is a pyrex. It's pretty small. It says that it's a 6-cup, 1.4 liter container. You could definitely use that if you're sharing it with your immediate family and you're not worried about people double dipping, or you could just simply use a spoon to put it on your plate. And I have 2 sizes of ramekins here, okay? So you could also build your dip in these. This is a slightly larger ramekin. This would be ideal if 2 people were sharing, or if you were doing this in front of a sporting event and everybody wanted to have like their own. This is kind of like a really small size. This would be perfect for kids if you were having like a birthday party or something like that. You might want to use this size of ramekin. But for our purposes today, I'm going to be using this pyrex dish. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my creamy layer and I'm going to put it in the bottom of my pyrex. Now this is a great make-ahead dish because it keeps really well in the fridge. So you can make it the night before you wanted to serve it, you can make it the morning of, and you would have, you know, something in the fridge that you could bring with you either to a potluck or to your backyard barbecue. So I'm just going to use an offset spatula and I'm going to kind of level out the bottom layer. And it's nice to use something glass if you have it because it allows the layers to show when you're making the dip. So ideally you want your layers to be kind of pretty because you're going to be seeing them from the outside of the container here. I'm just going to wipe this off and put that guy down there. Okay, just going to wipe my finger here and the edge of my dish. So this is the bottom layer and it looks really good. You can see from the side there's a nice profile and it's probably about 1.5 centimeters in terms of the depth for this container. If you don't have anything this small, you can definitely use something larger. Just keep in mind that your bottom layer will be thinner. So our next layer is going to be my salsa. If I can get this off. And I'm going to take my salsa and I'm just going to give it a mix here so that the liquid that's kind of naturally separated from it will reincorporate. And I'm going to take about 3/4 of what I've made and put it on top. Okay, and same thing. I'm going to use my little spoon or my offset spatula again. Okay, and I'm going to just spread it out here. Okay. If you really like salsa, feel free to add all of it, but you are adding another layer on top of this of similar ingredients, so sometimes I find it overkill if it's a bit too much. Like that's perfect. So I'm just going to set the remaining portion aside. It's not going to be wasted in my family. So I now have this. Now for my top layer, you have a lot of choices as to what you could put on here. So today I have 1 whole chopped tomato. This is just a vine ripe tomato. This is a green pepper and then just a regular cooking onion. So the green pepper, it's pretty finely chopped and it's about a quarter of a medium-sized green pepper, and this is about a half of an onion. Now, if you like it extra oniony, feel free to put way more onion in it. You can also add green onions if you prefer. You can add red onions if you prefer, Vidalia or white onion. You can also use colored peppers if you have that on hand. So red peppers, yellow peppers, orange peppers, okay? So whatever you have on hand, feel free to use, especially given this time where we're not going to the grocery store as often. And what I'm gonna do is I'm essentially going to make sort of like a fresh salsa topping almost. I'm gonna toss all my veggies together. Now, if people in your family don't like onion at all, feel free to omit that as well, because there is onion in the layer of the salsa, okay? So we're gonna take our vegetables and we're just going to spread them out in a nice thin layer over top of my dip here. And it looks really nice. The colors are really pretty. It's vibrant. And the last and final layer is a layer of cheese. Now, for this recipe, it specifically calls for sharp cheddar. So extra old or old cheddar is preferable. You can use Monterey Jack. You could use mild cheddar if that's what you have on hand, or it's what you prefer. You could use pepper jack cheese, okay? You can pretty much use whatever cheese you have on hand. And the pre-shredded stuff is fine too. I just used a brick from Costco and I ended up shredding my own. Now this is about, I would say, a heaping cup of shredded cheese. You want enough that your dip is covered. You don't want it so covered that, you know, like you can't tell what's under there at all. You should still be able to see, you know, hints of veggies here and there underneath. But this is pretty ideal. This is the kind of dip where if you bring it to a party, it's going to be gone within the first 30 minutes of food being served. So here's my dip. Now, if you look at the side of my dip, the profile, you can very distinctly see the base layer where the creamy is. You can see the salsa and the nice chopped veggies, and then you can see my orange shredded sharp cheddar on top, which looks amazing. So you want to serve this probably with some type of corn chip. So I just have large restaurant style corn chips here. And you could even make your own chips if you wanted. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing in a later video in my series is I'm going to be showing you how to make fresh corn tortilla shells. And those fresh corn tortilla shells can actually be turned into corn chips as well. So I'm going to find a relatively whole chip here, since these have been in my cupboard for 2 days or so and probably gotten beaten up. And I'm just going to take my spoon and some of the nice dip and place it on my cracker or my chippy here, and and it's so good that you won't want to share it with anybody. Make it at home and enjoy.